When we imagine the threats faced by early humans, we tend to think in primal terms: claw, tooth, and fang. Giant beasts stalking the plains, cold nights in caves lit by firelight and fear. Yet, for all the terrifying creatures that once roamed the Pleistocene world, the most dangerous predator was never a saber-toothed cat nor a cave bear. It was another human, or at least something very close. For most of our species' history, Earth was not a stage for a single actor. We were never alone. Homo sapiens shared time and territory with a surprising number of human cousins: Neanderthals, Denisovans, Homo floresiensis, and others we are only beginning to uncover. But there is one in particular who leaves behind not just tools and bones, but troubling questions about violence, power, and who we really are at our core. That species is Homo heidelbergensis, often referred to as the last common ancestor of modern humans, Neanderthals, and possibly Denisovans. They lived across Europe, Africa, and Western Asia between 700,000 and 200,000 years ago, during the Middle Pleistocene. This period was heavily marked by climate change, with ice ages succeeding one after the other. Ice ages transformed green zones into frozen wastelands in a matter of a few thousand years. Earth saw some of the most violent climate swings in history. In Europe and Asia, Homo heidelbergensis faced glacial advances that could wipe out entire ecosystems. In Africa, sudden droughts would parch rivers and split habitats. Every resource, including meat, water, and shelter, became scarce. Homo heidelbergensis had the means to impose himself on competitors. They were beings built like tanks, broad, shouldered, thick-boned, and standing as tall as we do. With a brain size approaching ours, they were not just brutes, they were smart, social, and technically skilled. Make no mistake, Homo heidelbergensis did not rise to dominance in a world free of danger. They were not the apex predator by default, they had to earn it. Their world was filled with creatures that could kill with one swipe, one bite, or one pounce. In Africa, they shared territory with giant archaic hyenas, saber-toothed cats like Homotherium, and the now extinct African giant crocodile. In Europe, they contended with Eurasian cave lions, larger than today's lions, and short-faced bears. Short-faced bears that stand over 3 meters tall and probably decapitate 3 people simultaneously with one paw sweep. In colder climates, packs of wolves, megaboars, and even steppe mammoths were potential threats, if injured or cornered. Homo heidelbergensis probably did frequently corner such animals. Besides these usual threats, they also might have been the greatest one of them all, the first humans to systematically hunt their own kind. We do not mean metaphorically. Across multiple archaeological sites in Europe and Africa, a disturbing pattern emerges. Skulls with signs of blunt force trauma, bones scraped clean of flesh, burn marks, and tool cut marks. These marks suggest butchery, not ritual or respect. At first, these seemed isolated, perhaps even explainable by desperate times. But as more evidence surfaced, a darker possibility came into focus. What if Homo heidelbergensis was not just a survivor, but a predator of its own species. This was not some post-apocalyptic scenario. These were humans' thinking tool using fire, making humans. They may have seen rival bands not just as competition, but as prey. If that is true, then the origins of war, murder, and conquest might go back much farther than civilization. They may lie buried in the caves of Atapuerca, in the blood-soaked soil of prehistoric Africa. They may lie in the very roots of our family tree. It raises the kind of question that lingers: what if humanity's greatest predator has always been itself? In this video, we will dig into the physical remains, the tools, the trauma, and the eerie patterns of behavior. These point to a reality as fascinating as it is horrifying. We will meet a species that may have wielded fire in one hand and a weapon in the other. They were capable of compassion one day and cold, blooded violence the next. Understanding where we come from involves not just tracing our achievements, art, language, and civilization. It also involves confronting the darker legacies, the ones that still echo in us long after the bones have turned to dust. Deep within the Atapuerca mountains of northern Spain lies a site that has both fascinated and unsettled archaeologists: Sima de los Huesos, or the Pit of Bones. This cavernous chasm has yielded an unparalleled collection of hominin fossils. These offer a window into the lives and deaths of our ancient relatives. Over 7,000 human bones representing at least 28 individuals have been meticulously excavated from this site. These remains are predominantly attributed to Homo heidelbergensis, a species considered a common ancestor of both Neanderthals and modern humans. The sheer number of individuals and the nature of their deposition have led researchers to ponder the circumstances that led to their accumulation in this subterranean sepulchre. One of the most striking findings is the presence of multiple skulls bearing signs of trauma. Notably, Cranium 17 exhibits 2 distinct perimortem fractures on the frontal bone. These injuries would have been fatal. The positioning and nature of these wounds suggest they were inflicted intentionally. They possibly indicate interpersonal violence or ritualistic behavior among these ancient humans. The discovery of a meticulously crafted quartzite hand axe, dubbed Excalibur, alongside the skeletal remains adds another layer of intrigue. Some researchers propose that this artifact may have been a grave offering. This hints at complex cognitive and cultural practices. However, the true purpose of the hand axe and the reasons behind the accumulation of bodies in Sima de los Huesos remain subjects of ongoing debate. Thousands of kilometers away in the Middle Wash Valley of Ethiopia, another enigmatic discovery sheds light on the behaviors of early hominids. The Bodo cranium unearthed in 1976 is a 600,000-year-old fossil attributed to Homo heidelbergensis. This skull presents compelling evidence of deliberate defleshing. Numerous cut marks consistent with stone tool use are etched into the bone. Notably, these incisions are concentrated around muscle attachment sites. They suggest a systematic removal of flesh shortly after death. The intent behind this defleshing remains a topic of scholarly inquiry. While some posit it represents an early form of mortuary practice, others contend that it could indicate cannibalistic behavior. The lack of associated faunal remains makes it challenging to determine whether this act was driven by ritualistic motives or survival necessities. The evidence from Sima de los Huesos and the Bodo site is not isolated. Other archaeological findings suggest that cannibalism may have been more widespread among ancient hominids than previously thought. For instance, a 1.45 million year old tibia discovered in northern Kenya exhibits cut marks indicative of flesh removal. This potentially represents one of the earliest instances of hominin cannibalism. The species responsible for this act remains unidentified, but the evidence underscores the complexity of interactions among early human ancestors. Furthermore, studies have assessed the caloric value of the human body to understand the potential nutritional motivations behind cannibalism. Findings suggest that while human flesh could provide a source of protein and fat, it is less energy rich compared to larger fauna like mammoths or bison. This raises questions about whether cannibalistic acts were primarily driven by dietary needs, or if they served other social or ritualistic purposes. The recurring instances of skeletal trauma and cut marks across various sites point to a complex tapestry of behaviors among ancient hominids. While some evidence may suggest survival cannibalism during periods of resource scarcity, other findings hint at ritualistic practices or acts of intergroup conflict. The intentional defleshing of the Bodo cranium and the traumatic injuries observed in the Sima de los Huesos assemblage suggest that Homo heidelbergensis engaged in behaviors that, while difficult to interpret fully, indicate a nuanced understanding of life, death, and perhaps even an early form of social or ritualistic conduct. These findings compel us to confront the multifaceted nature of our evolutionary history. They acknowledge that the path to modern humanity was shaped by a spectrum of behaviors, some of which mirror the complexities of human interactions today. In the evolutionary arms race of survival, early humans developed an array of tools that not only facilitated hunting, but also played pivotal roles in defense and potentially in conflicts with other human groups. The sophistication and variety of these implements provide profound insights into the cognitive and social advancements of our ancestors. One of the most remarkable archaeological discoveries shedding light on early human hunting capabilities is the unearthing of wooden spears at Eschningen in Germany. Dating back approximately 300,000 years, these spears are attributed to Homo heidelbergensis, or early Neanderthals. Crafted predominantly from spruce, the spears measure about 2 meters in length. They exhibit a design optimized for balance and aerodynamics, suggesting they were used as throwing weapons. The meticulous construction of these spears indicates a high level of craftsmanship and an understanding of material properties. The distribution of weight, with the center of gravity positioned forward, implies they were designed for flight. This enabled hunters to strike prey from a distance. This technological innovation not only enhanced hunting efficiency, but also reduced the risk associated with close encounters with large and potentially dangerous animals. The integration of stone tips onto wooden shafts marked a significant advancement in hunting technology. Evidence from the Gadomotta Formation in Ethiopia reveals that hominins were crafting stone-tipped projectiles as early as 279,000 years ago. These javelins predate the emergence of Homo sapiens and are indicative of the technological prowess of species, such as Homo heidelbergensis. Attaching stone points to wooden shafts, a process known as hafting, required complex cognitive abilities and fine motor skills. It involved selecting appropriate materials, shaping them meticulously, and securely binding them together using adhesives derived from natural resources. This innovation resulted in weapons that were more durable and effective, capable of penetrating the hides of large mammals and causing lethal injuries. Bone tools offered versatility and weaponry. Beyond wood and stone, early humans also utilized bone to fashion tools and weapons. Recent discoveries at Elduvai Gorge in Tanzania have unearthed bone tools dating back 1.5 million years. These artifacts, crafted from the bones of large animals like elephants and hippos, exhibit deliberate shaping and wear patterns consistent with use in butchering and possibly hunting activities. The selection of specific bones and the consistent methods of modification suggest a standardized approach to tool production. This implies not only an understanding of the functional properties of different materials, but also the transmission of knowledge and skills within early human communities. Implications for interpersonal conflict must be considered. While these tools were primarily developed for hunting, their potential use in interpersonal conflicts cannot be overlooked. The ability to craft effective weapons would have conferred significant advantages in territorial disputes or competition over resources. The presence of skeletal remains with trauma consistent with weapon-inflicted injuries at various archaeological sites supports the notion that such tools were occasionally turned against fellow humans. The development and refinement of weaponry reflect a complex interplay of cognitive evolution, environmental pressures, and social dynamics. These tools not only facilitated survival in challenging landscapes, but also shaped the interactions and hierarchies within and between early human groups. When we study Homo heidelbergensis, we are not just peering into the lives of distant ancestors. We are witnessing the birth of behaviors that laid the groundwork for modern human society. From cooperation to conflict, from care to competition, the social lives of these early humans were complex, adaptive, and in some cases, eerily familiar. Most paleoanthropologists agree that Homo heidelbergensis lived in small, tight-knit social groups, likely ranging from 15 to 30 individuals, close to what we know of the way of life of Neanderthals. These bands were probably structured around kinship, much like later hunter-gatherer societies. Living in smaller units would have allowed for flexibility and mobility, vital traits in the unpredictable Pleistocene landscapes they inhabited. Seasonal mobility was likely necessary as they followed game herds and accessed resources like fresh water, tool-making materials, and shelter. Evidence from sites such as Boxgrove, UK, and Schöningen, Germany, reveals repeated occupations over time. suggesting that certain places served as recurring hubs for group activity, possibly meeting points for multiple bands to exchange tools, mates, and knowledge. There is also evidence of care and collaboration. While Homo heidelbergensis is often portrayed through the lens of violence or cannibalism, there is also evidence of deep social cohesion. Fossilized remains from Sima de los Huesos show healed injuries that would have required long-term care, including a pelvis belonging to an individual with severe hip dysplasia who would have been unable to walk unaided. The fact that such individuals survived for years indicates they were not abandoned but supported by their group, a behavior considered distinctly human. This kind of care suggests cooperation beyond mere survival, hinting at emotional bonds, social roles, and perhaps even primitive empathy. These were not solitary hunters. They were interdependent beings surviving through shared labor, protection, and possibly even food distribution. However, where there is social cooperation, there is also tension. The fossil record also points toward interpersonal violence and group-level conflict. As mentioned previously, the Cranium 17th skull from Sima de los Huesos shows two nearly identical fractures, strongly interpreted as a deliberate killing, possibly even a form of execution or revenge. This raises important questions about social regulation within these groups. Were there rules, enforced norms, punishments? The evidence is too fragmentary to draw solid conclusions, but these trauma patterns suggest that Homo heidelbergensis was not immune to internal strife. In fact, they may have been the first human species to develop social mechanisms for conflict resolution or retribution. Territorial behavior may have been another aspect of their social structure. With a growing population and limited resources, encounters between groups could turn violent. Sites across Europe and Africa suggest patterns of repeated settlement in resource-rich areas, implying that certain groups may have claimed and defended territories, especially near rivers or game migration routes. Regarding communication and culture, while there is no direct evidence of language, anatomical studies of the Homo heidelbergensis hyoid bone found at the Castello site, Italy, and cranial base suggest they may have had the physiological capacity for complex vocalizations. Combined with their large brain size, averaging around 1/200 to 1/300 cubic centimeters, and evidence of strategic hunting and tool use, it is likely that some form of proto-language was in place. This would have dramatically improved coordination, group hunting, social bonding, and the transmission of knowledge. Hallmarks of what we now consider culture. That culture may have extended to their treatment of the dead. At Sima de los Huesos, bodies appear to have been deliberately deposited in a deep chamber accessible only through treacherous passages. Whether this was a practical disposal method or the beginning of symbolic mortuary behavior is still debated, but it suggests cognitive and emotional development far beyond instinct. The physical and archaeological record suggests that violence was not an anomaly among Homo heidelbergensis, but perhaps an integrated aspect of their social fabric. As resources became scarce and populations expanded into overlapping territories, conflict between groups likely intensified. Evidence of this comes not only from the lethal cranial injuries at Sima de los Huesos, but also from comparative studies of trauma patterns found on other early hominin remains, such as the Bodo and Kabu crania. These traumas, concentrated on the frontal and parietal bones, are consistent with blunt force trauma inflicted by handheld weapons, potentially stone tools or wooden clubs. Moreover, the fact that such injuries appear on individuals of all sexes and ages hints at a pattern of intergroup raids, territorial skirmishes, or internal disputes rather than isolated murders. The presence of advanced hunting tools, such as the Shedingen spears, could have easily been turned against rival humans, making Homo heidelbergensis not only apex predators of their environment, but, at times, predators of each other. Homo heidelbergensis appears as a threshold species, straddling the line between archaic instincts and modern mindsets. They exhibited empathy, but also aggression, community, but also conflict. They planned, hunted, protected their own, and at times killed them. They were the first humans to live in a social world that resembles ours in its full complexity: care, trust, betrayal, revenge, alliances, and perhaps even love. Homo heidelbergensis occupies a pivotal position in the human evolutionary narrative, serving as a bridge between earlier hominins such as Homo erectus and later species such as Neanderthals and Homo neanderthalensis, Denisovans, and modern humans are Homo sapiens. Their evolutionary journey, adaptability, and interactions have left an indelible mark on the genetic and cultural tapestry of subsequent human species. Emerging around 700,000 years ago, Homo heidelbergensis exhibited traits that were both reminiscent of their predecessors and indicative of future evolutionary developments. Their anatomical features, including a larger brain case averaging approximately 1/200 to 1/300 cubic centimeters, robust build, and advanced tool-making abilities, suggest a species well adapted to diverse environments ranging from the savannas of Africa to the temperate regions of Europe. Dispersal of Homo heidelbergensis across Africa and Eurasia set the stage for regional populations to adapt to local conditions, leading to the emergence of distinct lineages. In Europe and Western Asia, these populations are believed to have evolved into Neanderthals, while in Asia they gave rise to the Denisovans. In Africa, they are considered direct ancestors of modern humans. This diversification underscores the species' adaptability and their central role in human evolution. Recent genetic analyses have illuminated the complex interbreeding events among these descendant species. Studies indicate that early modern humans interbred with Neanderthals and Denisovans, resulting in the incorporation of archaic genetic material into the modern human genome. Approximately 1 to 3% of the DNA in non-African human populations is derived from Neanderthals, with certain populations in Oceania exhibiting up to 4% Denisovan ancestry. These genetic contributions have been linked to adaptations in immunity, skin pigmentation, metabolism, or even blood oxygenation, highlighting the enduring impact of Homo heidelbergensis, descendants on modern human biology. The archaeological record provides evidence of sophisticated behaviors among Homo heidelbergensis, including the use of fire, construction of shelters, and cooperative hunting strategies. Sites such as Sachsenhingen in Germany have yielded wooden spears dating back over 300,000 years, indicative of advanced planning and tool skills. These cultural innovations not only facilitated their survival in varied environments, but also laid the groundwork for the complex behaviors observed in later hominid species. The decline of Homo heidelbergensis populations appears to have been a gradual process influenced by climatic fluctuations, resource competition, and interactions with emerging hominin species. Ironically, descending directly from Homo heidelbergensis were Homo sapiens, covering most of Africa, Neanderthals across most of Europe, and Denisovans occupying Western Asia and parts of Siberia. Homo heidelbergensis was faced with its very own descendants that were better adapted to each environment, stronger, with larger brain cases, more cooperative than ever, more agile, or possessing greater dexterity. Finally, as Homo sapiens began to migrate out of Africa around 60,000 years ago, they encountered an interbred with Neanderthal and Denisovan populations, leading to a complex web of genetic and cultural exchanges. Over time, these interactions, coupled with environmental pressures, contributed to the eventual replacement of archaic hominins by anatomically modern humans. And maybe, just maybe, finally, the hunter became the hunted. If you made it this far, thanks for staring into the darker corners of human history with us. Homo heidelbergensis was not just a bridge between species. They may have been the first to prove that survival sometimes means becoming your own worst enemy, a predator in your own image. And the echoes of that, as we are reminded every day, never really stopped. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to our channel. This helps us greatly to provide you with 2 new videos every week. Feel free to drop a comment as well, as we really want to hear your thoughts on the nature of Homo heidelbergensis. And if you are still hungry for more, there is another chapter waiting for you. Check out our video on Neanderthals and their insane physical capabilities, a deep dive into the most misunderstood athletes of prehistory. Stronger than us, tougher than us, and maybe, just maybe, not as different as we would like to think. You are watching Echoes of Extinction, where extinction is not the end of the story, it is where we start. Till next time, keep listening to the echoes. Next time, we'll uncover the lost world of the Denisovans, a mysterious human cousin who thrived in Asia's harshest landscapes. Their story reveals secrets of survival, interbreeding, and a legacy hidden in our DNA. Join us to explore how these ancient humans shaped the tapestry of our species. Echoes of Extinction, where the past speaks and we listen. Stay curious.